At the end of the day, man, having a boyfriend ain't gonna work.
I just want to let y'all know I found someone that I never want to lose. Myself, bitch. What the fuck you thought this was? I give a fuck about these people.
He posted Proverbs 18:22 on Facebook. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. But what Jason Bloomfield didn't know was that there was nothing good about the woman he thought loved him. In just weeks, this so-called good wife would brutally murder him for less than $500. She dragged his body, tucked it behind a couch, and continued to sleep just feet away as his corpse decomposed. For days, she got away with it, until Jason's 15-year-old son walked into a nightmare, finding his father's body hidden and rotting. When police arrived, she put on an award-winning performance, crying without tears, spinning lies that almost convinced everyone. But one mistake shattered her story and exposed a dark past Jason could never have imagined. This is the story of Jason Bloomfield and the senseless murder by the woman he thought God had sent to him. Welcome to Femme True Crime, where we tell the raw, untold stories behind the headlines. If you're drawn to truth, justice, and powerful storytelling, join the family. Subscribe now. Jason Bloomfield was a 46-year-old Jamaican American working shifts at Burger King. For a man his age, with a teenage son watching his every move, this wasn't the dream job. But Jason did what he had to do to keep the lights on, to pay the rent, and to put food on the table. He was a man of faith, and it showed. His Facebook intro read, "I really tried to always live godly and grow closer to the Lord. I hope my son Jairus does." Jason wasn't rich, but he carried wealth in something else. Hope. Hope that one day he'd give his son more than struggle. Hope that his mother would be proud of the man he became. Hope that love, family, and peace were still in his future. Jason found escape in small joys. On Sundays, he'd sit in front of the TV with a cold beer, ready for Miami Dolphins kickoff, shouting at the screen like every other diehard fan. And like most Jamaicans, music was medicine for him. Drew Hill, John Legend, rhythms that carried him through heavy weeks. But more than anything, Jason prayed for a wife, someone to share his burdens with, someone to complete his family. And in 2024, when he met 37-year-old Vianita Lan, he thought his prayers had finally been answered. He even wrote on Facebook, his wife, forever. He has a real woman now. We don't share over here, period. Jason believed he had found his good thing. But what he didn't know was that Vianita was no blessing. She was a wolf in sheep's clothing. And the Bloomfield family was about to learn that in the most devastating way.
It's 3 reasons why I don't like people asking me questions. Because I like to fight, and I like to fight.
The two moved fast. Vianita left Detroit, bounced through Miami Gardens, and soon moved into Jason's apartment in Broward County. On the surface, she seemed stable, working as a reception tech at CSL Plasma, maybe even picking up shifts with United Way Broward. To Jason, she looked like a woman who was trying, who carried herself well enough to build a life with. But online, Vianita told a different story. Her social media was raw, unfiltered. Videos of her disoriented, sometimes half-dressed, sometimes smoking or high. She posted provocative photos, danced, twerked, lived in chaos. And here's the question. Did Jason ever see that side of her? Did he ignore it as just fun and games? Or did he convince himself that love could change her? Because what we do know is this. Jason, the God-loving father who shared Bible verses, never could have imagined that the woman he proudly called his wife online would become the woman who ended his life. On Saturday, November 23rd, 2024, something happened inside Jason's apartment that should have raised every alarm bell. 6 gunshots echoed through the building. Neighbors froze. The sound came from Jason's unit. A few of them worked up the courage to knock on his door, and when it opened, it was Vianita standing there. Calm, cool, almost casual. She told them she'd heard the shots too. Probably just somebody messing around with a gun outside, she suggested. Maybe kids. Maybe neighbors. Nothing serious. Her explanation was thin, but nobody wanted to pry. It's Florida, after all. Guns aren't rare. People minded their business and went back to their lives. But behind that door, the truth was far darker. Because by the time Vianita answered those knocks, Jason Bloomfield was already dead. And here's the part that chills you to your bones. By the next morning, Vianita woke up, got dressed, and left the apartment. She greeted neighbors. She went to work. She smiled at coworkers. She interacted with customers. Nobody knew that the woman walking among them had just murdered the man she claimed to love. Nobody knew she was returning home each night to an apartment where Jason's body was left to decompose, hidden behind a couch covered with a stack of clothes and blankets. She lived with the stench. She lived with the silence. She lived with what she had done, and carried on as though life was normal. For nearly a week, no one had heard from Jason Bloomfield. No calls to his mother. No texts to his sister. No daily check-ins with his 15-year-old son, Jairus. Not even a heads up to his manager at Burger King. This wasn't Jason. Jason was responsible. He had a family, bills to pay, a son who depended on him, and a mother who expected to hear his voice every single day. But while his family worried, Vianita was busy weaving a story. When she noticed the people who cared about Jason were trying to reach him, she picked up his phone and began pretending to be him. She sent long messages to his sister, rambling texts that didn't sound like Jason at all. These messages were sent late at night when Jason was usually in bed. "Love you, sis. Going to bed now. Gotta work in the morning," one of them read. It didn't sit right. Jason's sister knew his rhythm. She knew his tone. She knew the way he texted. These weren't his words. And when his sister pressed further, Vianita didn't back down. Still pretending to be Jason, she doubled down with lies. She claimed Jason had broken up with her. She claimed she had moved out of the apartment. She claimed Jason had already gotten back with his ex. She wanted them to believe she was no longer in his life at all, that Jason had pushed her away and moved on. Jason's sister pressed further. She started texting Vianita directly, but the web of lies only spread. Vianita told her that yes, Jason had been cheating on her, that he had dumped her, and that the last time she saw him was that morning when she left for work. But none of it made sense. None of it felt real. Family knows family. And Jason's sister wasn't buying it. She shared everything with their mother, and after days of worrying, Jason's mom and his teenage son decided to go to his apartment and check on him themselves. What they found when they opened that door would scar them forever. On the 29th of November, 2024, 7 long days since Jason's family last heard from him, his 15-year-old son and his mother made the painful decision to check on him themselves. They arrived at his apartment and knocked. No answer. They called his phone. Still nothing. Then they remembered something. Jason's back door had been taken off its hinges days earlier. Maybe, just maybe, it was still that way. They went around the back. Jason's teenage son, still with that restless energy of youth, pulled the loose door aside. And that's when it hit them. The stench. The kind of smell that sinks into your bones, that tells you before your mind is ready to accept it. Something is wrong. Something is dead. At first, they didn't want to believe it. But as his son stepped further in, scanning the room, his eyes caught something no child should ever see. A body part, sticking out from under a heap of clothes. His heart stopped. He called out to his grandmother. Together, they uncovered the pile. And there was Jason, riddled with gunshot wounds, already decomposing, his body hidden like trash in his own home. The pain that washed over them in that moment, words can't even capture it. Jason's mother tried desperately to shield her grandson from the horror, holding back her panic and tears, but it was too late. That image would never leave him. They stumbled out of the apartment and called 911, their voices shaking as they tried to explain what they had just found. When officers arrived, they immediately sealed off the home. The crime scene unit was called in. Detectives swarmed the apartment. The coroner's office was notified. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't natural. This was murder. And from that moment forward, the hunt for Jason's killer began. And just as if she had been summoned, Vianita suddenly pulled in, driving Jason's BMW. When she saw the flashing police lights, the yellow tape, the crime scene units, it should have been a moment of panic, of despair, of remorse. But instead, Vianita began her performance. She cried, she rambled, she acted confused. Detectives, trying to calm her down, still pressed with questions. Almost immediately, she started talking about an ex-girlfriend, claiming this woman had broken Jason's car windows months earlier. She insisted Jason had kicked her out 2 days before Thanksgiving, and said she was staying at her grandfather's house when his body was found. But none of it made sense. And Vianita's rambling didn't stop there. According to the probable cause statement, she was in a playful, laughing mood. She even joked with detectives about superheroes, about Johnny Cash. Imagine that. Standing outside the apartment where the man you supposedly loved was found decomposing, and you're laughing. As questioning went on, her story kept shifting. First, she admitted she argued with Jason before Thanksgiving on November 28th. Then she changed it to November 24th. Finally, she claimed it was November 23rd, the exact day neighbors reported hearing 6 gunshots echoing through Jason's apartment. She was trying desperately to rewrite the timeline, to trick the detectives, to erase the evidence. But neighbors weren't fooled. Interviews revealed that Vianita had been aggressively approaching people in the complex, trying to control what they said. She wanted to make sure nobody snitched. Some neighbors even said they felt unsafe around her. Still, the lies piled up. And then the evidence began to speak for itself. Cell phone records placed Vianita inside Jason's apartment at the exact time those 6 shots were heard. GPS data confirmed it. She had been there when Jason was murdered. And detectives uncovered something even darker. After Jason was already dead, someone had accessed his financial accounts. Transactions were made. Money was moving. They traced those transactions straight back to Vianita. She had Zelled $500 to herself. $500. That was the value she placed on Jason's life. And while she spent his money, drove his car, and told lie after lie, she was also sleeping, eating, and living in the same apartment as his decomposing body. Think about that for a second. The man who trusted her, the man who called her his wife, the man who prayed for love, for a good woman, and believed God had answered him. That man was left to rot in his own home for $500. Detectives kept piecing together the puzzle, and soon, the picture became clear. Crime scene analysis of Jason's apartment told the story of what happened that Saturday night. Jason was probably in the living room, maybe sipping a beer, maybe just trying to relax after another long week. But then, sparked by tension, whether it was financial struggles, her constant half-naked social media posts, or the looming threat of eviction, an argument broke out. And that's when Vianita snapped. Troubled by her past, hardened by her demons, she pulled out a gun and fired 6 shots into Jason's body right there in his living room. This wasn't self-defense. This was cold-blooded murder. She dragged Jason's lifeless body from the living room into the bedroom, leaving a gruesome trail of blood behind. She stuffed him behind a couch and covered him with clothes and blankets. Then, in an attempt to erase her crime, she grabbed bleach, towels, and a mop. She tried to clean up, to scrub Jason's existence out of that apartment. But blood always leaves markers. And detectives were able to retrace everything she did that night. The evidence pointed in one clear direction: Vianita. But by the time detectives had enough proof to charge her, she was gone. She moved the way she always did, drifting, hiding, leaving chaos in her wake. And yet, even while on the run, she was still active on Facebook, still putting up her mask for the world. In one chilling post, she wrote, "God first, working, family, and living comfortably is all that's on my mind. To God be the glory and all the praises, amen." A woman who had just killed her boyfriend, talking about God. She bragged, "They don't make 'em like me no more, last of my dying breed." She called herself humble now, claimed to be cut from a different cloth. And in a twisted way, maybe she was. Not because she was special, but because she was brazen enough to murder a man who loved her, sleep beside his decomposing body, and still get on social media pretending to be righteous, pretending to be chosen, pretending to be holy. But the truth always catches up. An arrest warrant was issued. And for months, she moved like a ghost. Until May 2025, when a sharp-eyed officer recognized her during a routine traffic stop. And just like that, Vianita Lennon's run was over. In court, she was charged with murder with a firearm, identity fraud, and several financial crimes. Prosecutors described her as a career criminal, citing her previous run-ins with the law. She wasn't some lost soul. She was an unrepentant felon who had managed to charm her way into the life of a man who only wanted peace, stability, and a better life for his son. And yet, despite the mountain of evidence, Vianita pleaded not guilty, still trying to manipulate her way out. But this time, the judge wasn't having it. Bond was denied. She now sits in jail, awaiting trial. What does it say when justice moves slower than grief? Jason's family mourns, while the woman accused of destroying their world still insists on her innocence. Love is more than Facebook posts and sweet words. It's sacrifice, it's trust, and sometimes it's risk. Jason wanted forever. He prayed for a wife. He thought he had found his blessing, but blessings don't come wrapped in deception. This story isn't just about one man and one woman. It's about the red flags we choose to ignore, the masks people wear, and the silence that often costs lives. Jason Bloomfield was not just another case file. He was a father, a believer, a man trying to live godly and give his son a better future. But his trust in the wrong person cost him everything. And now his son has to grow up with that loss, carrying questions no child should ever have to ask. Vianita Lennon remains alive, accused, awaiting her day in court. But Jason will never have his again. So ask yourself, if the person you love showed you two faces, one in public, one in private, would you recognize the truth before it was too late? Because Jason's story reminds us, love can give life, but in the wrong hands, it can take it away. If you watch this and move on without thinking about the people in your own life, those in toxic relationships, those ignoring red flags, then you've let silence win. Don't be silent. Don't scroll past pain. Subscribe, share Jason's story, and let it be a reminder that love without truth is just a tragedy waiting to happen. This is Femme True Crime. Thank you for staying with us. If this story shook you, subscribe, share it, because awareness is the only bridge we have between hope and heartbreak.